Hi. Now we've already talked about how to prune bush roses when we looked at Lady Emma Hamilton, and of course lots of other rose types to think about. One of those is what I call a pillar rose. Now pillar roses are roses that can be grown very well up pergola posts, arches, arbours and things like that. They're slightly different to climbers and they're certainly very different to ramblers, so the way I prune pillar roses is different to the other two. Now basically pillar roses are quite often bush roses that have a lot of vigour to them. This is a variety called James Galway. It's another David Austin rose. David Austin produces some fantastic flowered roses these days, and the reason I've chosen it is because it has quite an upright habit, it has a lot of vigour, so much as it can be grown as a nice bush rose to this sort of size, it also lends itself really well to growing up a post. And the beauty of the David Austin roses, which he advocates as the climbing type, is that you'll get flowers low down. Now I'm sure that if you've got climbers at home, you'll notice and sometimes get frustrated by the fact that you get all the flowers at the top of where they're growing and nothing lower down. So if you've got arches, arbours and things like that, climbing roses are often actually not the best choice, and ramblers certainly aren't, because you'll get all your flowers at the top and not low down. If you want to see the roses low down, always choose a bush type rose that has the vigour to grow up. Now James Galway has the most beautiful, perfectly formed English style flower. It's pink of varying shades and it opens to form a very tight rosette. Stands up to the weather very well, much better than some of the other types of roses, and this will flower from around about a couple of feet above the ground right to the top of where it grows to, and in a season this rose will be quite easily to the top of the post. But we're at the end of March now, and it is important to make sure that the plant's pruned correctly before it starts growing too actively. Just the same as bush roses, you'll notice there are no flowers on here because I took them all off in the autumn. It's not quite so important with pillar roses, the windrock, because of course this is tied into the post quite loosely, so it's not going to blow around too much. But taking the flowers off is a good idea anyway, because it keeps the plant nice and tidy and reduces the chances of diseases getting in through the dead tissue of the old flowers. So we talked about the 3 Ds, the dead, the diseased and the damaged growth, and it's important you do exactly the same with a pillar rose. So I notice after the winter, what you'll often find after a cold winter is you'll get some dieback of the plant because the top shoots, the ones closest to the top of the stem, have caught the weather quite badly, and it's important to get rid of those so you don't get any disease coming in through the tissue. Remember how we talked about the angle of the cut? So if we're going to prune back to this nice healthy strong shoot here, which is already growing away beautifully, make sure that the angle of the cut is away from, there you go, is away from the shoot, okay? And that means any water is going to run away from the stem and make sure any damage doesn't get caused to the tissue. Also, you'll see some very thin bits of growth here. It's always important to try and remove the thinnest growth because that's not very self-supporting. It tends to flop quite a little bit. So take that down to where that comes from, just down there. Now don't worry too much about taking growth off because the plant is going to replace it very, very quickly now. You can already see how many leaves it's got on. It's not too late in the season. So do take some of that very thin growth out. There's another little bit just there. Okay. Now again, if I take that low down to the ground, what will happen is we'll get a new fresh growth, much stronger. So we're aiming for nice thick stems here, not the very thin ones. And as the plant gains in age, you tend to find that the stem tissue gets stronger and it holds itself much, much better. There's a little bit of dead tissue here. That was fine through the winter, but already it's showing signs of dying back. So take that back again to a nice strong shoot that's growing actively, angling the cut away from the shoot, like we talked about earlier. There's a little bit more here. This piece of growth here. Again, the winter's killed that top bud, so take that away, pruning away from the shoot. There's a little bit just here, which is dead. Again, take that away to a nice strong shoot, always making sure the angle's coming away from the stem. And there's another little bit here. This is where some of the flowers were in the autumn, which I took off. And again, there's a bit of damage on this bud here, so that wants to come right the way down to that nice strong shoot, just like that. And another one here. Now there's 2 shoots there, one of which is dead, one of which is alive, so I'm going to take that away just to be on the safe side. And again, angling away from the bud. Now the only other thing you need to do with the pillar rose is to make sure that the plant's tied in nicely, which it is already, and what you'll find is then from all these shoots lower down you'll start getting flowers another 6 or 7 weeks from now, I would imagine, and as the plant gains in height Again, just tie it in and make sure it doesn't flop around too much, and you'll get a plant that's flowering from bottom to top for the good part of the summer season. Now, David Austin roses are bred to repeat flower these days. The newest hybrids repeat beautifully, so as you see the flowers fading, don't be afraid to keep taking them off, and that will prolong your display through the summer as much as possible. And that's basically how you prune a pillar rose.